Today we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 2, called Divinity and Divine Service, and we're reading text 7. Is that what's here? Okay, great.
7.
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Jnanam Chayada Hoitukam
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayat Ahaitukam
Jnanam Chayat Ahaitukam Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Janayati Asu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayat Ahaitukam
Jnanam Chayat Ahaitukam.
Ladies?
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Bhakti
Yoga Prayojita Janatyashu vairagyam
Yanam Shayada Hetukam
Yanam Shayadaitukam
Vasudeva Bhagavati
Vasudeva Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojitam
Bhakti Yoga Prayojita
Janayati Yashu Vairagyam
Janatyashu vairagyam
Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam
Jnanam Shayadaitukam
Vasudeve
Vasudeve
unto Krishna,
unto Krishna
Bhagavati
Bhagavati
unto the personality of Godhead,
unto the personality of Godhead
Bhakti Yoga,
Bhakti Yoga
contact of devotional service,
contact of devotional service
Prayojitaha,
Prayojitaha
being applied, Janayati,
Janayati
does produce, Asu,
Asu
very soon,
Vesu
Vairagyam,
Vairagyam
detachment,
Yashvashma
Jnanam,
Jnanam
knowledge,
Knowledge
Cha,
Cha
and
and
Yat,
Yat
that which, Ahoy to come,
Aitukam
causeless. Translation. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Please repeat. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead,
rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead,
Sri Krishna,
Sri Krishna,
one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world.
one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world.
So Prabhupada has a purport, it's about 2 pages, almost 2 pages, consisting of 2 paragraphs. So perhaps I'll read some and then speak some and read some more. This is a purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those who consider devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to be something like material, emotional affairs may argue that in the revealed scriptures, sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, mystic powers, and similar other processes of transcendental realization are recommended. According to them, bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord, is meant for those who cannot perform the high-grade activities. Generally, it is said that the bhakti cult is meant for the Sudras, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent women class. But that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for the pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord, and it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti. To achieve the contact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is a great science, and it is open for all living beings, including the Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than the low-born Sudras. So what to speak of the high-class men like the qualified Brahmanas and the great self-realized kings? The other high-grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, etc., are all corollary factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult. Om Ganatamarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvase Sasunyavadi Paskyata Devshitane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank you for the warm welcome that we got yesterday, myself and my traveling companions, His Kinchana Prabhu and his wife Rajeshwari Prabhu. And I really want to express my gratitude to Janananda Swami and all the devotees here, Lord Janananda Prabhu, for maintaining this project. We were discussing yesterday in the car, this is the only temple in continental Europe where Srila Prabhupada visited. All the others have been changed to other places. So this is a very, very special dham, and we're so grateful that you've taken it heart and soul to maintain it and invite people to come and experience Krishna consciousness here. Thank you very much. So this beautiful verse, I'll just read it once more. We haven't finished the purport, we're halfway, but just to start. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So we know in the first chapter of this canto, which is the very beginning, the sages asked 6 questions of Sukadeva Goswami. One of the questions was, the very first question, they wanted to understand the absolute truth and what is the ultimate good for all living beings, especially for those who are in the human form of life. A very significant question. And then following that, they asked, what is the essence of all the scriptures? The scriptures are vast, the Vedic scriptures and the corollary scriptures. So it can become bewildering. What is the essence? What are we supposed to do? So this second chapter, systematically, Sukadeva Goswami is responding. He begins by offering beautiful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he glorifies the sages. Sukadeva Goswami glorifies the sages for their questions. He says they're very worthy questions because they relate to Krishna and they satisfy the self. And then he begins his response to those questions, explaining what you read yesterday, the supreme occupation, the Dharma, supreme Dharma for all humanity, is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So here is the absolute and ultimate good for all living beings, especially those who are human, that we want to attain this service to the Lord without motivation, without ulterior motives, and we want that service to be continuous. We don't want it to be broken in any way. And now today what he's saying is that by rendering service in this way, then we'll become detached from this material world and we'll also acquire knowledge. So in this purport, Prabhupada is explaining that those who are uninformed or misunderstand the Vedas consider bhakti as an emotional affair, he calls it. And they prefer sacrifice, they prefer charity, austerity, mystic powers to try to attain the absolute. They're saying that bhakti, this process of bhakti, is meant for those who cannot perform these other activities. And he's explaining that this is a complete misunderstanding. That actually, the supreme absolute truth, he's also called Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja means he is beyond the material senses, beyond the realm of the mind. So how can we possibly approach him? Our ways of acquiring knowledge are through the senses, whether the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the sense of touch. And if the Lord is beyond all these things, how can we possibly understand him? So one may say, well, the mind. The Gyanis tried to speculate to understand the supreme absolute truth. But the Lord is also beyond the material mind. That means that the only way to understand the Lord is if he himself agrees to be understood by us. In other words, for the very crude analogy, if we want to see the Prime Minister and he doesn't want to see us, there's no question of us seeing him. He has so many guards that will keep us away, so many ministers, what have you. However, if he wants to see us, nothing can stop that. If he calls upon, I want to see so-and-so, and that person can come before him easily. So this process of bhakti, Prabhupada calls it here, it's a great science. The great science of bhakti is the process of pleasing Krishna, trying to please Krishna so that he will want to see us. And then if he wants to see us, then all opulence will be there for us, all knowledge, all detachment. And the process of gaining Krishna's favor is devotional service, as we know. However, devotional service very often, because we're in this material world, trapped in this material body, we have material desires. And when we come to bhakti, we may also come with material desires. So yes, part of us wants to please Krishna, and part of us also wants to be known for our service. So part of us wants to please Krishna. We hear about the glories of devotional service. We hear about exalted personalities who obtain devotional service. So we have this desire, yes, I want to engage in this process and make spiritual advancement. But we also may have the desire, I want to be known for the service I'm doing. I want to have a position and have respect. I want to have some material benefits of the service that I do. So in this way, bhakti can be mixed. And very often in the beginning stages, it is mixed. And then we don't get the full taste that we're promised. One taste is described here in this text 6, completely satisfy the self. So if we have these material desires, we'll also find that we're not completely satisfied through bhakti. Also it's said in this verse that we're reading today that we'll have detachment from this material world as well as knowledge. And again, if the devotional service we're performing is mixed devotional service, then the full blossoming of these qualities of detachment and knowledge, of full satisfaction, will not be fully realized by us. There'll be some blockage there. However, we're very fortunate, because the process of devotional service, even in the neophyte stage, is a joyful process. One of my favorite quotes from Prabhupada that was anecdotal. I didn't read it or hear it directly, but however I heard it through a very reliable source. In the 70s, when book distribution was in full swing, some devotees were extremely effective in distributing books. And they went to Srila Prabhupada with the proposal that they could travel around the ISKCON temples and they could train devotees how to distribute books as effectively as this little group distributed books. And they explained to Prabhupada, they could train the devotees what to say so people stop walking, what to say so they hold the book, what to say so they give a donation, all these things. So Prabhupada heard them very patiently. And then Prabhupada's response was, you simply train the devotees to be sincere. And then Krishna, from within their hearts, will give them the words to say and the behavior to be an effective book distributor. And then he said, each person is his own genius. Each person is his own genius. So whatever position of society we're in, Prabhupada, in this purport paragraph that we read, he talks about Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than the Sudras, as well as high-class Brahmanas. Whatever position one is in society, one can do some service for Krishna and do that with brilliance, even if it's a simple service. We can do it with attention. We can do it with a submissive attitude, the desire to please the Vaishnavas, to please the Lord, to please the spiritual master. Do it with awareness that we're doing this with a transcendental mood, not for ourselves. And in that way, make very steady progress and also do what we love to do for Krishna. In this way we can make advancement progressively. It may not be rapid advancement, but it's progressive advancement. And if we're doing what we love to do, we can continue to do that thing. We associate with the devotees, we honor a little prasadam, we live simply, and have a joyful life, even before we become Uttama Bhaktas. So this is a very wonderful process Prabhupada has given, and it's really up to us not to mess it up. Mess it up with material desires, material ambitions, material motivations. These things muddy the waters. Otherwise, if we let the waters settle, then we'll find the clarity of purpose, we'll find the bliss of Krishna consciousness, the bliss of association with like-minded devotees, of honoring prasadam, of living simply, and of having the clarity to see this world, this material world is really, really crazy. We were traveling yesterday and had a very good look at the insanity of this material world. In the airport, they force you to walk through. You can't enter the airport without walking through all these places that are trying to sell you wine and coffee and cigarettes and chocolate and perfumes and all these unnecessary things that people will spend their money on and then be in debt and then be in anxiety and work so hard to pay off their anxiety and remain in debt because they're not keeping up with their neighbors and so on and so forth. It's truly an insane world. So to have the clarity to see that and to be fixed in our service, whether it's simple or complex, is truly a blessing that Srila Prabhupada has offered all of us. And all of us can take full advantage of it. So I'll just go on here. We still have a paragraph left of the report. The principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything material and spiritual. And the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. Becoming detached from material things does not mean becoming inert altogether, as men with a poor fund of knowledge think. Naishkarma means not undertaking activities that will produce good or bad effects. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean, negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials, I'm losing my place here. Similarly, detachment from material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things, and he becomes attached to superior things. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living being, leads him out of material sense enjoyment. That is the sign of a pure devotee. He is not a fool, nor is he engaged in the inferior energies, nor does he have material values. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge or detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the bhakti cult. Bhakti is the supermost occupation of the human being. So here we have the example in our lineage of Gaurkishore Das Babaji. He is known as illiterate, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as we know, he was highly educated, highly intellectual. Even reading what he wrote is very difficult for most of us to understand from the language that he uses. And yet he surrendered heart and soul to Gorkishore Das Babaji, who was known as illiterate. So why is that? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he explains that in his words, in his humility, he had some pride. So he went to Gorkishore Das Babaji, thinking that Das Babaji would be very honored to have such an elevated intellectual disciple, such an exalted Brahmana disciple. And Gorkishore Das Babaji did not accept him. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was devastated. And he asked more than once, please accept me as your disciple. And he was repeatedly refused until he finally gave up what he considered to be pride and fully surrendered. And then he said that he had a taste of bhakti that he didn't have from all his intellectualization. He was very grateful to his Guru Maharaj and considered him so exalted. And also, he was very knowledgeable in the scriptures. So this is an example of one who realizes transcendental knowledge from within his heart. Prabhupada mentions that in this purport here, and also in the Gita we find in the 10th chapter, Krishna says that from within the heart of the devotee, he brings the shining lamp of knowledge and dissipates the darkness of ignorance. So we see that in this example, and we have another example from the Chaitanya Charitamrita when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India, and he came across also an illiterate person, and the Brahmins were laughing at him, this illiterate person, because he was reading Bhagavad Gita, trying to read Bhagavad Gita, although being illiterate, and ignoring the ridicule of the Brahmins. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a conversation with him. Why are you reading? If you can't read, it doesn't make sense. And the Brahman explained, my Guru Maharaj instructed me every day, read Bhagavad Gita, so I'm following his instructions. Unfortunately, I have not been educated in reading. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is very good, but why are you crying while you're reading? And the Brahman explained that although I can't read what I'm seeing, but in my mind I have this vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead driving the chariot of Arjuna, his faithful devotee. And I'm so inspired and overcome by the sweetness of the Lord, by his service to his devotee, that I become overwhelmed and I cry. So there's examples here that Krishna does enlighten those who fully surrender unto him. And they get this causeless knowledge from him, from his grace, as well as detachment. In the first paragraph we read here, we're reading about those who feel that other methods of approaching the Lord are superior to bhakti. Sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, and so forth, mystic powers. And we learn that actually bhakti is the supermost, is the ultimate way. But those who take bhakti cheaply, they don't have this sense of detachment, and that's how we can recognize them as taking it cheaply. The father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explained there are 13 Apa Sampradayas. We have our Sampradaya, and then there are Apa Sampradayas, and they actually go against the instructions of the authorized acharyas. And most of them can be recognized because they do not have this detachment from the material world. They take bhakti as something cheap. So just following the 4 rules and regulations that Prabhupada requested of each and every disciple, no meat eating, no illicit sex, and so forth. These things the followers of the Apa Sampradayas cannot do, because they're still attached to this material world. So that sense of detachment comes from knowledge. one who has knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the Lord, he will also become less and less affected by the material goings on and more impressed in his heart of the activities, the pastimes, the characteristics of the Lord and of his devotees. So this is the beautiful future that we have to look forward to. And I think to some extent all of us experience it. We grow up in this Western society and we're exposed and expected to engage in the four sinful activities. And the fact that we're in the temple and we're following the process and we've given up these things means that we've had this positive attachment to the positive form to one extent or another. And we can give up the negative, the non-essentials. Prabhupada calls them here. Negation of the non-essentials is not meant for negation of the essentials. I think there's a typo here. Negation of the non-essentials is not meant for negation of the essentials. So we negate these four things. Materialists would say, how can you live without them? And we give them up very happily. And we replace them with beautiful process of hearing and chanting about Krishna. So, in 1972, during Kartik, Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and in the mornings he would give class on Srimad Bhagavatam and on this chapter, Divinity and Divine Service. In the evenings he would speak on the Nectar of Devotion. And he gave class also on this verse that we're reading today. So I thought I made a few notes about the class that he gave. I thought we could go over them, and then perhaps we can have some discussions about this. But he started by pointing out that there are 8,400,000 of species. It's the Lord Brahma's creation. And that of all of them, the humans are distinguished from the other 400,000 humans are distinguished from the other 8 million forms, because only in the human form can we have religion. That is the unique quality of the human form. All the lower forms, they're simply eating, sleeping, meeting, and defending. Reading and defending. But the humans have religion. And this unique quality, it's like, he says it's unavoidable. Just like we have the state laws. Here you drive on the right. We just came from a country where they drive on the left. So we may say, well, what is the use of this law? Doesn't matter. But no, the state laws must be followed. So similarly, the laws of God are the laws of religion, and they must be followed by human beings. This is not optional. So he says also that this religion, this dharma, is actually the beginning of human society. And it includes morals, it includes social interactions, it includes economics, it includes politics. Nothing is excluded. That those who follow dharma, it means it alters their character, improves their character actually by following dharma. And that affects every aspect of human society. And one who follows purely uplifts human society. However, then he also mentions that there are different dharmas for each of the four social classes. That the Sudras have their dharma, that they're supposed to serve the higher classes. And the Vaishyas have their dharma, trade, economic development. And the Kshatriyas have their dharma, heroism and protection of the other classes. And we know also the Brahmins have their dharma described also in the Gita. Dhamma, Samadhamma, Siksham, Arjuna, and so forth. So in that way, each of the four classes have their own dharma, but all of them are meant for the pleasure of the Lord. All of them are meant to advance in bhakti yoga. There's no exception to that. He says that Vaishnavas, for Vaishnavas, they can be identified because they do not have envy. One who has envy has not yet come to the platform of being a Vaishnava. Also, we find the same idea stated in the very beginning, that all cheating religion is kicked out. Kaitava Dharma is kicked out. I think it's the second verse here. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. And that highest truth is to distinguish reality from illusion. So as one continues this process of bhakti yoga, one can gradually more and more distinguish this reality from illusion. Prabhupada goes on to say that others who are practicing what we read in this sacrifice, charity, austerity, and so forth, they have some material motive. And that motive also distinguishes them from Vaishnavas. And that motive means they cannot attain peace. They cannot attain full satisfaction. Here in text 6, we read, devotional service that's unmotivated and uninterrupted completely satisfies the self. But if one is doing it to reach the Brahmajyoti, if one is doing it any kind of devotional service, as I was saying earlier, because we want profit, adoration, distinction, then we won't have the peace of heart, we won't have the peace of mind that is the actual product of pure devotional service. Prabhupada also mentions that Krishna's mercy is, as I was trying to say, that he enlightens us from within our hearts. If we simply try to perform service without ulterior motives, we'll have the blessings of the Lord upon us. And then we'll know actual advancement. He gives the example, a beautiful example, that if we feel hungry, it's an analogy, and we're eating, then naturally that hunger will be satiated. Naturally we'll feel our hunger dissipated. So if we're eating and we still feel hungry, then there's something wrong in the process. So similarly, if we're doing devotional service without material motivation, without interruption, we'll feel peace of mind. We'll feel satisfied in our hearts. And if we're lacking that, then we can look within ourselves and see what is amiss. Where is the material motivation? Where is the interruption? Perhaps there's a lack of good association. Perhaps I'm not utilizing my genius as I should be utilizing it in the service of the Lord. So it's a beautiful process to explore, and a wonderful world to be open to, and magical also. Prabhupada wanted us to go to India regularly to become rejuvenated in devotional service. There's a certain quality about the dhams and about doing devotional service in the dham that is so inspirational that it can carry us for the whole year, and then we go back and become rejuvenated again. So those are some thoughts. I think there's some time for some reflections and discussion. Please.
How can one become free from pride?
How can one become free from pride? Yeah, Krishna mentions in the Gita, the very first quality of knowledge is humility. And then the next one he says is pridelessness. So if we serve submissively and serve with the idea of pleasing those whom we serve, then that will reduce the pride. And also if we understand actually how small we are, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair, then that will also reduce pride. And if we also understand that whatever we can do is simply the gift of Krishna, and Krishna can take away that gift at any point in time, anything can happen to any of us at any time. And gradually, as we reach the dwindling stage, it does happen. And so that also reduces pride. So actually humility is the reality. Pride is a false state of being. Pride, if one has pride, it means there's a lack of knowledge there. So if you find somebody who's proud, you can know that they don't have full knowledge at that point in time. Does that help? I don't. Please.
The question was asked to Srila Prabhupada. He buried by Aravidas Prabhu. Well, what is humility? And paraphrasing, he answered, to understand that nobody can protect us against death. Then you become humble.
Yes. Prabhupada Prabhu was on a walk with Prabhupada, I think, and he asked that question. What is humility? And he was very astonished by the answer, because Prabhupada said, not your family, not your friends, not your relatives, not all your money, not all your accoutrements, your house can protect you. Only Krishna can protect you. That is humility. And in his humility, sometimes Prabhupada would be very bold and very challenging. He would walk on Juhu Beach with this Dr. Patel, who Dr. Patel thought he was a Vaishnava. He had memorized the Bhagavad Gita. And it turned out through the conversation that he was actually a Mayavadi. And they would have ferocious arguments. To the point that the devotees walking with Prabhupada were very upset. And so Prabhupada did something unique. He had a devotee bring Krishna book, and as they walked, they would read from Krishna book. And then Dr. Patel wouldn't join because he liked the banter. So he would walk separately, so that it was a peaceful walk. So humility doesn't mean that you don't stand up for Krishna when need be. It's not just to be meek and in the back and not speak and not this and not that.
Regarding pride, most of the inimical qualities have a counterpart or counter, positive counter. Is there's a place for a positive pride? Does that counteract the negative pride also? Spiritual pride, Prabhupada talks about spiritual pride. Maybe you can comment on that angle.
Yeah, that we can be proud to have such a spiritual master as Srila Prabhupada. We can be proud to have such a personality of Godhead as Sri Krishna, so beautiful and so mischievous, so playful, so responsive to his devotees, so unpredictable. We can be proud to have such exalted association. There are many things to be proud of, spiritual things to be proud of.
Process of devotion.
Process of devotional service.
You mentioned Holy Dawn. Is that also can be seen as a way of counteracting the negative pride? Would you say that?
I would say that we have to be conscious of that all our gifts are coming from Krishna. That's, I think, would be an essential aspect of counteracting pride. In other words, if we have pride in our spiritual master and Krishna and the association of devotees and the Dham, but we still can be proud of our intelligence, our ability, and so on and so forth. What do you think?
I think so. I don't know. I'm still full of mundane pride. So I don't have that attitude. Still think I'm the enjoyer and doer, center of the universe. Desiring name, fame, and prestige. We give that name, fame, and prestige to Krishna. We hope that will help.
this question you said earlier that true Vaishnava overcomes jealousy. So is this pride kind of related to jealousy in some way? Or in how to overcome this jealousy?
Yeah, envy is a great problem. And also we want to look at spiritual envy if we can. But materially, there's tremendous competition, there's tremendous ambition. You know, Prabhupada was in Tokyo at one point. He was negotiating for printing his books with Dynapan, big book publisher there. And he was sitting around the table with all the executives, and finally, when they finished negotiations, the executives left, and there was some secondary person there who was cleaning up after the meeting. And the devotees, or perhaps Prabhupada, asked him about his ambition, his goal. And there was a stack of business cards, and he slapped his on the top. He wanted to be the top person in the organization. So that's the material mentality, that no one is satisfied where he or she is, no one is peaceful where he or she is. And this is due to envy. So a process for overcoming envy, I think, is to become fully engaged in serving Krishna with our abilities, and doing that for Krishna's pleasure, for Prabhupada's pleasure. And then realizing that that simple process gives Krishna pleasure, gives Prabhupada pleasure. There's no need to be envious of others, whatever they're doing or saying or being. It doesn't affect my relationship with Krishna. That continues. So let them be glorious in their own rights, and we hope they are glorious in their own right, and excel in their service. And we can celebrate that excellent service of the other person, and still remain satisfied in our own slow and steady progress in Krishna consciousness. And in that way, there's no reason for envy, there's no use for envy. Whatever ability another person has been given by Krishna, just as whatever ability I have has been given by Krishna. So why begrudge that ability in the other? Just exalt in it. Be proud of it. There's a place for pride. You can be proud. Krishna has given this person such ability. It's beautiful. It should be sung to the rafters, so they can do this service for Krishna. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Are there any other points anyone would like to bring up? We have a couple of minutes. Please.
How do we know that we are advancing in Krishna consciousness? And is humility like the parameter of how far you have been going?
Like what I heard was, how do we know we're advancing in Krishna consciousness? You know some of them?
And is humility the barometer of that advancement?
So I think we can understand how we're advancing in Krishna consciousness, how we don't hanker to do the things that we used to do. Many of us, at least, were not born and raised in Krishna consciousness. So we had so many habits that were not helpful for spiritual life, that if we don't look at those wistfully, oh, I wish I was doing X, Y, and Z that I used to do, but rather we're engaged in service and we feel pleasure in that service, that's a sign of advancement for sure. So we're not hankering to go to the parties or go to the places where we used to go and hear the music we used to hear and associate with the people we used to associate with. That's negation of the negative, as Prabhupada writes in his purport. And that's very welcome. And that's a definite sign of advancement. Mostly if you bring people here who are involved in that life, they'll always be thinking about that. If they haven't engaged in devotional service and heard the philosophy and honored prasadam and chanted Hare Krishna and so forth. And then certainly, yeah, humility is a sign of knowledge that's mentioned in the Gita, in chapter 13, text 8. Krishna mentions humility as one of the processes of knowledge, and at the end of that series he says that all these are a sign of knowledge, and what's not here is a sign of ignorance. So, yeah, this mundane pride is a sign of ignorance, as I was saying, and the growth of actual humility is a sign of progress, because it means that we're dependent on Krishna. We're feeling more and more dependent on Krishna, and more united with Krishna. So that's a great blessing for us. So it's really, what we're talking about here is causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Humility is a sign of knowledge. Without humility there cannot be knowledge. And the detachment from all the useless activities that we used to do, the ways that we wasted our time.
Hi, Krishna Mataji. You mentioned the 400,000 types of human beings. Did Prabhupada give any elaboration, or do you know of any further details as to what are the parameters of those types of human beings, like bodily, racial, or consciousness, or does it include also beings from other planets, etc.?
Yeah, it definitely includes being from other planets, because in the universe there are 8,400,000 species, and the humans are 400,000 of those 8,400,000. My understanding, it's a question of consciousness, although I would like to hear from others what their understanding is. But even the demigods are included, yeah, in the human form, one of the 8,400,000. Maharaj, do you have an understanding of how that division is made?
That's what you always understood what you just said.
Consciousness. Does anyone else have an understanding of that? Consciousness? Sorry?
Amazing, the variety. Variety is always there with Krishna. Even in conditional life, there's so much variety. 400,000 human types of.
There's a statement of Srila Prabhupada not mentioning 400,000, but mentioning 8,400,000, so it would include the 400. Is that they're distinguished by different types of desires.
Different types of what?
Desires.
Desires. So that's a reflection of the consciousness.
So it would be understood. That also means within the human species too, different modes of nature and Muslim, particular individuals, they desire. Otherwise you could change, in one sense, from one species within the human form of life without changing your body, which is basically, you could say, the effect of association, Krishna conscious association, more or less changing your species. You look the same, more or less. The consciousness has changed.
Prabhupada did say that his followers are bright-faced. Bright-faced. Because formerly they had been dull-faced. So that's a reflection, perhaps, of their consciousness changing.
To comment on little details, the translation of the word ashu, ashu, it's very quick, and Prabhupada translate immediately. So it's pretty common in Prabhupada's nature of preaching. He's always very convinced, enthusiastic. Can you comment on this immediately?
Well, it's up to us. He was asked in Australia about going back to Godhead, if it will take many, many births. And he said, 1 second. 1 second. He said, don't you read Bhagavad Gita? It's up to us. It's a question of our consciousness, our desire. So in that sense, what's holding us back? We have met the enemy and he is us. So, yeah. So that's the immediate if it wasn't for all our blockages, our coverings, it would be immediate. But because, at least myself, we have so many blockages and coverings, we've tried for the slow, steady method and hope for the best. Thank you so much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Grace Vishaka Prabhu ki
Jai.